What's good, y'all? Welcome to my review for episode 30 of Stone Ocean. A phenomenal episode once again, man. Absolutely loved it. Something that was interesting about this episode, well, one, I know I mentioned this probably during the second batch of episodes with what's his name? That one stand that was like, "Oh yes, master. Yes. No, you don't understand, master." You know that guy. Araki really seems to love body horror because that episode had a lot of body horror with the tree. This episode was basically half the episode was on body horror, man. So I think Araki just really loves body horror, man, which, I do enjoy me some body horror here and there, too. So, whatever. And the designs actually look pretty, very creepy, very disgusting looking. And, yeah. But another thing that I thought was interesting about this episode is that there was actually a scene from the manga that was actually cut in this episode. Now, I only found out about this because a video titled Netflix removed this scene from the Stone Ocean anime popped up my recommended, so I watched it just out of curiosity. And basically, what the scene is, and if I remember when I upload the actual review, I'll put this in the description if I remember. No promises on that because when I record these episodes first, when they're probably actually going to get uploaded, it's going to be 2 different time frames, so I might have just forgetting about it completely. But if I remember, I'll put in the description for you guys. But basically, the scene in question was during the scene with Anastasia and weather forecast when they were kind of like walking away from the hospital. And Anastasia like, "Hey, weather, where are you going?" Apparently, there was supposed to be these like 2 women that were supposed to come to weather forecast, and they kind of get all close to him, get to wrap their arms around him, and then he just uses weather forecast and electrocutes them both. Yeah, that was a scene that got cut. I couldn't really tell. It was kind of hard to tell because it was on top of a plant of the scene of plankton, be like, So I couldn't really tell exactly for certain, but that looked like that's about what it looked like. But yeah, found it kind of interesting that there is a scene from the manga that was cut in this episode, man. I just thought that was kind of interesting. But anyway, guys, let's just jump right into the actual episode. So we start the episode off back with weather forecast and Anastasia. Right after weather forecast had bumped into that guy, a doctor comes there and like, "Hey, man, that seat's reserved for patients only." So then weather forecast grabs this dude by the throat and then he's just like, "Oh, if you want him to sit so bad, why don't you let him sit on you, you fractured bastard?" And then water just starts excreting out of like his eyes and everything. The dude sounds like he's honestly drowning, man, and it looked really freaky with all the water coming out of like his nose, his eyes, and his mouth, man. It looked pretty freaky, as I guess he like drowned him to death. I think that's how he ended up dying, judging from the sounds he's making. Of course, it's water and everything coming from every like hole in his body, minus his asshole. Anyway, he's out down on the ground and he starts to walk away. Anastasia's asking him like, "Hey, bro, hey, weather forecast, what's going on? This isn't our enemy. It's just some random doctor." So then that's when he's like, and then weather forecast looks at it. It's like, "Weather." I'm like, "Who the hell do you think you are, weather?" And that's when we realize, oh, my name must be weather forecast now. I don't mind it. And the man just casually walks away from him before, of course, striking a pose. It is not a JoJo episode without somebody striking a pose, man. It's one of the most JoJo poses ever, too, man. Like, bro, I look at this pose, I'm like, bro, are you modeling for something? Man? Why are you posing like that? This ain't like a fucking like model show going on here, bro. Why are you posing like that? Anyway, and this is of course when the cutscene that I mentioned earlier was supposed to play in that was supposed to play right here before we get back over to with Hermes and Jolie. So now we have like the devil's rainbows coming down there. You have Versus trying to like get himself untied from Jolie's threats. He finally manages to do, but then Hermes comes to ready to deal the final blow to Versus. She ends up her stance passes through the rainbow, and right as she's about to make contact, it stops, and then like a hole opens up in her arms where all these like snail shells start to coming out of her arm. She's like, "What the hell is that?" Before it just steals itself back up. So obviously she's kind of confused on how all of this is happening, and Versus mentioned that this is all part of Weather's new powers that he now has obtained now that he has his memory disc back, and that now he can even mess with the ozone layer, and everybody will die. So then, as they're trying to figure out what the hell's up with the snails and why and what's up with the snails and everything, and Hermes and both Jolie are asking for questions. That's when Father Pucci re-enters the scene, and I love also all the like sound effects they do for all the hard cuts they do in this episode whenever a character makes a reappearance. And so he explains that this weather forecast is subconscious to this, and because of how finicky it is to predict the weather and then weather is in general, his stem will something activate just from his just by him subconsciously. Subconscious will activate Stan completely by accident when he doesn't even know it's even happening. So, and he tells him that's just why we need to keep the memory disk away from him. And the only way to end all this like the devil's rainbow and the snails and everything is to either A, kill weather forecasts, of course, or B, try to find a way to get the memory disk back out of his body to help him stop this phenomenon. So, and then Father Pucci just walks away into the shadows, which I just thought it was funny just the way he just like after he's like, bye, deuces, and just walks into the shadows and tells him like to not let Versus get away. So then, of course, right as he says it, Versus is like, oh shit, and makes a break for it. So he's trying to run out there. Jolene uses her thread to wrap around his leg, but the second it wraps around his leg, it wraps around the arm of one of the cops, and they're finally back inside the hole. Of course, the three kids are right next there, and they instantly start grabbing towards the cops about what happened, and so Jolene and both Hermits are kind of confused on how the hell they got back here. Then they're surprised that the hole was this shallow. And they suspect that Verse has deactivated Netherworld. And that's how they're back here. So right as they're about to get outside, that's when the cops start to recognize them as the two escaped convicts from prison. But some of the rainbows start to get affected, and they both start to turn into snails. And like I said, Rocky goes full on with the body horror in this episode, man. And the designs themselves look really fucking freaky. Looked really good when we see them start to morph more and more into snails. It looks really cool, but also really fucking disgusting. So yeah, that seems pretty cool. I also love the droning sound effect they play as the rainbows start to make appearance. I really did the sound effect that David Productions used here, man. So we see what's going on in the rest of the hospital. Basically, anyone that gets attacked, that gets hit by these rainbows and start having the snails in them, basically start to turn into zombies. Like we have one of the nurses be like, "This is so terrible," and then like one of the other guys there is like, "So terrible," and so as they're trying to figure out what's going on, Hermes about to touch the rainbow again, but Jolie managed to get out of the way. But Jolie sort of like lightly grazes one of the rainbows, causing her to have like a little bubbling effect on her arms, but it disappears quickly. So it seems like stand users end up having a much more higher resistance to the snails than non-stand users do, and that's kind of maybe how they don't turn into snails, at least not instantly, and how their bodies kind of regenerates. Speaking of the snails, I gotta say, I also really dug the effect they used for the snails, like on the cops when they started to morph into snails, like when their heads exploded and like there were snail shells coming out of it. It looked really fucking cool, man. I really dug the effect. I mean, I'm pretty sure it was like mostly CGI they did it with the shells at least, but it looked really cool, man. I really dug the effect they used for it. So Hermes is of course at Jolene like, hey, is weather forecast our enemy? Who is our enemy right now? And Jolene said like, weather forecast is an ally. He is not our enemy. We cut back to weather forecast and on a stage as they're walking away. And before we cut right, and Anastasia's trying to get weather forecast attention, but he's not listening to him. We then like cut over, which right next to them when Versus is running away from the hospital, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to figure out how to obtain heaven himself. He then opens the ground this is when I kind of figured out what was up with Father Pucci in the last episode. Because you all remember my review in the last episode, I mentioned I was kind of confused on how Father Pucci is in the ground, but he's also just standing right next to him, and he's able to obtain the memory disc from weather forecast. We kind of get a better, or at least this is when it finally clicked to me anyway on how it works. So basically, when they like their memories are such, and when we know how his stand works, where the ground stores a memory of whatever people that said on it in that good time, and he can rewind what happened to them at once. So we see what happened with Jolene, where he like digs into the ground and he sees the memories of Jolene and Hermes when they were sitting there in their full bodies and everything in the ground, as they tell him that Emporium has JoJo's memory disc, and that he's going to take it over to Speedway Foundation. So he's like, all right, cool, got to get JoJo's disc. I can obtain heaven, cool, and I can finally be happy as he wants. I also gotta say, I really dug the camera angle here they did for when Versus is running through the city. I thought it looked really cool, man. I thought the angle they used looked really cool. So then we cut back over to Jolie and Hermes, and she gives us a fun fact, ladies and gentlemen, where Hermes says that actually snails don't have a gender. That the way they procreate is by like they like smash each other's antennas on their like I guess their heads, I guess, and that's how they end up, and they create a shit ton of babies. She also says that when she like sees all the snails all over the floor of the wall they're both hanging onto, that's a snail orgy. And one other thing that was also pretty cool right here is you guys know that at least the dub anyway, whenever we get to the yada yada yada, more times than not, the dub usually says has either Matthew Mercer or Kira say "good freaking grief." Well, I'm pretty sure this is the first time we actually heard Jolene or JoJo for that matter say "good fucking grief." Seriously, like, bro, I'm like, oh shit, hell yeah! Now we're going all in with it now. So, I know I mentioned this countless times in review, but it bears me like it's still jarring hearing all these f bombs in the part 6 of, and I do wonder why this has only been a thing for part 6. I don't know if it had something maybe to do because the fact that dub was originally for parts 3 through 5 were airing first on Toonami before they released on Blu-ray. I don't know if maybe something with this has something to do with it, why they weren't dropping F-bombs as much as they are now with part 6. I don't know if maybe this was something with Netflix, you're given more freedom. I don't know what the deal is, man, but hey, I've been enjoying all the F-bombs in part 6, man. I honestly do wish these were also in parts 3 through 5 as well, because they're pretty funny, man. And it would have, and I mean, they could have like really enhanced certain scenes in part 3 through 5. They added some fucks in there, man. But whatever the case may be. So yeah, and then Jolene actually says, that she mentioned that she's actually kind of jealous of the fact that snails can just have sex with anything, basically. But then the second she puts a real thought, she's like, wait, that's disgusting. So that scene was pretty funny, man. I thought that thing was pretty funny. Eventually, they end up slipping off the floor before we cut back over to Versus, and he's still looking around, trying to figure out where the hell Emporio is, trying to figure out where the JoJo stand is. And so we also see more of the people get infected by this mad snail disease. That's what I'm gonna call it. Mad snail disease. Shout out to SpongeBob, man. That episode was awesome, man, with the whole mad snail disease. Now it's been we've seen what happens to the mad snail disease in JoJo form. Now we know what would actually happen if it was real. Man, we would have JoJo. Anyway, so he's looking around trying to figure out where Emporium. He can't find him anywhere. But then as he's running away, as he keeps running, he ends up passing right by Emporio as he says, I am not gonna fail this time. I'm finally gonna be happy. Honestly, I was actually kind of surprised when we actually do see Emporio like run right past when they do like run right past it. I also expected them to do the whole like slow-mo thing where we see them pass each other for a hot second before it goes back to normal speed. They didn't do that, man, which I was always kind of surprised the production does it, because most times they're not in anime and other things, they always do that slow-mo shot when two important characters pass by each other, man. So honestly, I kind of wish they did do it here, Parsons, because I do like those kind of shots, but hey, no worries, man. Anyway, Emporio is still trying to get the JoJo's memory disc in the hands of the messenger of the Speedwagon Foundation. We've already then cut back over to Versus, where he still can't find Emporium, and that's when he starts to check the ground. We then see Emporio's phone go off. He answers it, and there's still no answer. But then he gets sucker punched in the back of the head by Netherworld, and then Versus starts to check him, trying to find a memory disc. He can't find it on his body, but that's when he also notices that the phone is also missing from his hands. Well, he's questioning whether or not he's going crazy, and then he like grabs his legs up there like he's about to drag him away. But no lie, when you look at the shot by itself, it could make for a pretty funny out of context JoJo, meme image, because you're like, hello there, sir, good sir, what do you plan on doing with this child? You know what I'm saying? But anyway, he then notices Jolene and Hermes come down. He's like, oh shit, fuck me. Like I said, I love the F-bombs in part 6, man. Hopefully this stays for part 7 and part 8, regardless of if Netflix is involved with those two as well or not. I honestly hope they're not, bro, because I'd rather be reviewing JoJo weekly than reviewing it like this, man. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, guys, then he starts to drag him into this bush. Hermes manages to catch it, but then as they start to get towards the bush, a fucking Porsche comes out, or at the very least, it looked like a Porsche. I'm not a car guy, so I could be wrong, but it looked like a Porsche. But I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Either way, a Porsche comes in out of nowhere, slams into some lamppost that causes both Jolie and Hermes to fall in piles of snails, turning them both, and they both start to morph into snails. And so Jolene tells Jolie not to worry about her and to go get Emporium. He's in the bush. I saw it too. She uses her threads, but because now she's morphed into a snail, it doesn't go as far, and she's now become as slow as a snail. So there is a lot she can do. And then we hear someone like 45, say hike. fucking Jacksonville Jaguars come out of the fucking bush. Okay, they're not actually the Jacksonville Jaguars, but the colors on the jersey look very much similar to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and this takes place in Florida. The Jacksonville Jaguars is in Florida. Jacksonville, AEW, all that shit. So either way, so they start to drag Jolene away, man. JoJo, man, it's the absurdity of JoJo, man, knows no bounds, man. It's fucking hilarious, man. So as she's getting dragged away, Versus is like, oh, we're in Florida, they love football here, enjoy getting dragged into the end zone, Jolene. And then right after he says, I thought this was pretty funny. I was like, oh yeah, I should be careful. It's dangerous if I touch these things too. I just thought that scene was kind of funny. Like after he says, he's like, oh yeah, I need to make sure I'm not new. As he like moves Emporio a little bit. I just thought that was funny. So then Netherworld starts digging into the ground again, and he sees in the Durst memory that indeed Emporio did have the disc on him, but then suddenly it disappeared. And then that's when he notices a member of the Jacksonville Jaguars running up some palm tree with Jolene's thread attached to it, but there's no Jolene. Then this random like pipe just comes out of nowhere and then just smacks him in the face, revealing that was instead Jolene inside of it. And you have Hermes talk about how because of how soft and slimy she was able to squeeze in there no problem, and now she's gonna fuck you up. Like I said, been loving the F-bombs in part 6. But then he punches on the ground, emitting like some like mist, a sort of like a mist with like salt in it, because it was like from the memory of like the evaporated salt water, and that apparently salt is actually also the weakness of Snail. So yeah, salt is Snail's kryptonite. Cool. Didn't know that. As I say, you learn something new every day. Anyway, then he gets back to stripping Emporio. Seriously, he takes off his shoes and socks, trying to figure out what the disc is. We then get a close-up of his pants, and I'm like, bro, are you actually about to take this kid's pants off? And I'm like, bro, this is gonna be perfect for like out of context JoJo clips, man. But no such thing happens where he finds out that their powers are actually quite similar, and he sees a small bag by his belt loop, pulls out there, pulling out some of the stuff that's in there. He of course finds JoJo's memory disc. He's like, yes, I win! So then as he's running away with JoJo's memory disc, we get some narration from Jolene saying that apologizing to Emporio that she had to use him, but because of the fact that she touched him, and by extension he touched him, or that she touched him, and by extension he touched him, he's now going to get the effects of it instantly, and then the next thing we see is him turning into a snail. And I gotta say, his snail design looked amazing. I mean, it looked creepy as shit and weird, but it looked really fucking cool. And I think out of all the characters that got morphed into snails, I think he had the best design out of all, man. I really dug his snail design, man. It looked really cool, man. I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a splash page when this was in the manga. It looks really cool, man. Seriously. Anyway, Jolene finally manages to catch up to him. Emporio wakes up, and then we find out that the carrier from the Speedway Expedition has been held up, and they're basically waiting until it clears up before they can finally get over here. She hotwires the car with her threads, and you got Hermes teasing her about being a car thief, which is like, no man, I was in someone else, and she's like, yeah, no, I'm just playing. And so this thing was pretty funny, where Jolene tells Versus not that he better not that if he knows what's good for him to not start running. He's like, I couldn't even if I wanted to. Also, I'm pretty sure his voice changed up a little bit as well in this snail form. His voice sounded a little bit deeper than usual. I don't know if I'm just going crazy or not, but I'm pretty sure his voice was actually a little bit deeper in this section of the episode. But I could be wrong on that one. So anyway, Hermes opens the car and notices there's a bunch of empty snail eggs in the car. She doesn't know how weather forecast is able to create this phenomenon of the snail, but she has a good idea of how it's going to end, and it's with snails' natural predators, and that because snails are always so slow, they often get eaten by these predators as the way they go out, and they basically just like dig into the snail shell, eat their heads off, and then eat the rest of them off, leaving just behind empty shells. And because that's why these predators have been given the name of snail snuckers. So yeah, kind of straight to the point with the naming of these of snails' natural predators. But yeah, it seems like perhaps Jolene and others might get eaten by these small little insect things. So that should be interesting. We then head over back with Anastasia and Weather Forecast, as Weather Forecast feels Father Pucci somewhere near him, and he's ready to settle the score with him. So I don't know if we're going to get that fight if that's going to be the next episode where we are going to see Weather Forecast and Father Pucci duking it out, but I'm definitely intrigued with that. Anyway, guys, that is where the episode ends. phenomenal episode, man. Absolutely loved it, man. Comedy is always fantastic with JoJo, man. Just all the absurdity of it, man. Love the body horror in this episode, man. Araki, I've noticed, has gotten really good body horror, man. Like, I don't know if any of the other previous JoJo parts dealt with any body horror in them. They might have. I can't remember because it's been a while since a lot of these parts aired, at least on Tsunami. But the body horror in part 6 has been fantastic, man, and I've been loving all of Araki's design he does for all these morph creatures, like with the trees in the second core, as well as with the snails in this episode, man. So overall, guys, my final rating for this episode is a 10 out of fucking 10, ladies and gentlemen. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like if you did, subscribe if you're new. Follow me on my socials if you feel like it. The links to the description box below. And as always, come back for more. See you guys next time.